Look, if you've been anywhere near global health news over the last couple of decades, you've definitely heard about the opioid crisis. But today, we're going to look at this not just as, a tragic issue of individual addiction. We're going to look at what the data actually reveals it is. A staggering, systemic corporate crime, one that intentionally crossed international borders and literally devastated entire nations. We're going to connect the dots here and show you exactly how a pharmaceutical playbook engineered in one country got packaged and exported all over the world.
Okay, let's dive into this and untangle the web. Here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at the four-nation anomaly, then trace things back to patient zero. From there, we'll see how the contagion crossed borders and do an autopsy on exactly why these specific countries got hit. Finally, we'll track the 3 deadly waves of the crisis before wrapping up with a pretty chilling global warning.
So let's jump right into part 1, the four-nation anomaly. This really establishes the central mystery of the whole crisis.
Now, what's really wild about this slide is the grim similarity across 4 totally distinct countries. I mean, at first glance, the US, Canada, the UK, and Australia, they seem like they have entirely different healthcare setups and social structures, right? But they all share this exact same devastating public health emergency. In the US, we're talking over 100,000 deaths a year. Canada, a massive oxycodone surge followed right by a severe fentanyl epidemic. Over in the UK, they're seeing rising deaths from synthetic opioids like nitazenes, deeply linked to poverty. And in Australia, there's been this massive surge in prescriptions driven by really aggressive corporate marketing.
To really wrap our heads around the stakes of this anomaly, you need to soak in this number, 60 million. According to global health data, that is the estimated number of people worldwide who are currently struggling with the addictive effects of opioids, 60 million. So this isn't just some localized outbreak, it is a massive, highly calculated global contagion. And to figure out how on earth we got to 60 million, we have to find out where it all started. Which brings us to part 2, patient zero. We're going to shift our focus and rewind the clock back to 1996 in the United States to isolate the root cause. We can actually trace this incredibly rapid, calculated escalation back to one single company, Purdue Pharma. They incorporated in 1991, putting their entire focus on pain management. By 1995, boom, OxyContin is introduced. But 1996, that is the critical year. Federal prosecutors later found out that Purdue actually knew about significant abuse of their drug, that these pills were being crushed, snorted, stolen, and they completely concealed it, kept it totally quiet. It wasn't until 2007 that Purdue finally pleaded guilty to misleading the public and paid $600 million. But as you're going to see, by then, the damage was very much done.
So how did they push so many pills into the market so incredibly fast? Well, they had to totally flip the medical consensus. Historically, the World Health Organization was super strict, limiting opioids strictly to the terminally ill or folks in severe pain. But Purdue? They just overturned decades of strict medical caution. They marketed OxyContin to pretty much everyone for any kind of chronic pain, hyping it up as this wonder drug. They essentially engineered this whole illusion of safety that completely upended a long-standing foundation of healthcare.
And they built that illusion on a massive foundational lie. Sales reps were literally instructed to go out and tell doctors that fewer than 1% of patients became addicted to OxyContin. Think about that. This single devastating fabrication convinced doctors that it was perfectly safe to hand out heavy narcotics for everyday aches and pains. And that lie directly resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths. But the financial payoff for that deception? It was absolutely staggering. Just look at this data. In 1996, OxyContin brought in $48 million. Fast forward just 4 years to 2000, and that rockets to $1.1 billion. By 2010, $3 billion. It is a stark, totally horrifying contrast between these unprecedented financial profits and the human costs that came with it. But once the US market was totally saturated with these pills, where did they go next? Let's dive into Section 3, the contagion crosses borders. And this brilliantly illustrates a shocking imbalance. Look at this usage data. Just 20% of the global population is using a massive 90% of the world's legal opioids. And who is in that 20%? It's primarily the US, Canada, Germany, and Australia. The pharmaceutical companies specifically zeroed in on these wealthy, English-speaking nations for one simple reason. They represented the most highly profitable markets on Earth. And they didn't just accidentally stumble into these countries either. They actively exported their corporate playbook. A 2016 investigation showed that Purdue Pharma International, which is based in the UK and basically acts as Purdue's global counterpart,
They took those exact same aggressive marketing tactics. They took those exact same non-addictive claims, and they intentionally pushed them into other wealthy nations like Australia. They knew the formula made billions in America, so they just hit copy and paste across the globe.
Which brings us to a really critical question in Section 4, the autopsy. Why these specific nations? Why were the US, the UK, Canada, and Australia so uniquely vulnerable to this?
Well, researchers at UCL and The Lancet actually identified 4 shared structural vulnerabilities. First up, privatized or profit-driven healthcare systems. That setup basically allowed for uncapped sales incentives and aggressive marketing. Second, these countries share English-language medical literature. So the minute American doctors were convinced OxyContin was safe, those compromised medical journals just spread that message like wildfire to doctors in Britain, Canada, and Australia. Third, you have deep social inequality and despair, providing really fertile ground for addiction. And fourth, critically underfunded drug treatment and public services. Meaning, when people did get addicted, there was literally no safety net there to catch them. It was the perfect storm of systemic and governmental failures.
And because those safety nets were missing, the crisis didn't just stay contained in doctors' offices, it mutated. Let's look at Section 5, the 3 deadly waves.
Experts track this whole tragedy in 3 distinct, awful steps. Step 1 was the first wave, running from the 1990s to about 2010, where legal prescription pills just flooded the market and millions got hooked. Then comes Step 2, the second wave, from 2010 to 2013. This is when governments finally woke up to the danger and restricted the prescriptions. But the addiction was still there, so users were essentially forced to turn to cheaper, illegal street heroin. Then Step 3 hits, from 2013 to today. Cartels step in and start replacing heroin with incredibly cheap, lab-made synthetics like fentanyl. And that right there is when the death toll spikes catastrophically.
To really grasp why this third wave is so absolutely deadly, we need to talk about what fentanyl actually is. It's a synthetic drug, right? And it is 50 to 100 times more potent than heroin or morphine. Cartels manufacture it super cheaply because the raw chemicals are easily sourced from China and India. But its potency is horrifying. Just 2 pounds, literally less than a kilogram, is enough to kill 500,000 people. Because it's so strong and so small, it's incredibly easy to smuggle, making it basically the ultimate deadly cutting agent for dealers to secretly bulk up other street drugs.
And the result of that synthetic wave is staring us right in the face with this number: 106,699. That is the total number of overdose deaths reported in the United States in just the year 2021 alone. And the really scary part? The data shows that an overwhelming 88% of those deaths were driven directly by fentanyl and other synthetics.
But this third wave isn't strictly an American problem anymore. It's manifesting differently across our 4 nations. The US is fighting this massive fentanyl wave driven by cartel synthetics, for sure. But look across the Atlantic. The UK is facing a surging threat from nitazines. These are synthetic opioids that can be up to 500 times stronger than heroin. The UK actually recorded nearly a 4-fold increase in deaths involving nitazines recently. So, this synthetic contagion is actively mutating as it crosses borders.
Which brings us to our final section, a global warning. As we look at what's coming next, the findings from the Stanford Lancet Commission paints a pretty chilling picture.
So the absolutely crucial point is this. The North American opioid crisis originated from a multi-system regulatory failure. I really want you to take that away from this explainer. This was never just a story about individual choices or some simple street drug problem. It was a massive systemic failure across healthcare, government regulation, and corporate oversight that allowed a single profitable lie to kill hundreds of thousands of people. And because it is a playbook, it can be reused. Right now, these opioid manufacturers are facing massive legal backlash and restricted markets in the US and Canada. But the evidence shows they're just packing up and moving. They are actively shifting their sights to the global south, running this exact same playbook in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. They're just seeking out new, less regulated markets to exploit, all over again.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply unsettling thought to consider. We've seen the blueprint, right? We know the corporate tactics, we know the regulatory blind spots, and we've seen this devastating 3-wave progression. So, as this highly profitable, highly deadly crisis moves into Latin America, Asia, and Africa, who will be held accountable next?